My name is Patrick. I work for the International Mountain Bicycling Association. I've got a strange accent. I'm not from the USA. I'm from Belfast, Northern Ireland. So I grew up over in Ireland and lived there probably 30 years. My family are all still there. My parents, brother and sister, big family over there. But I came over to the USA in about summer 2000, and I was up in Vermont for 11 years. So I went from, I was right up in the northeast corner of the USA, in a border state. It borders Quebec and Canada, which is pretty interesting, to then move to Arizona, which is obviously another border state. So I was in Vermont for 11 years. I worked for the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps in a Vermont state park, which is like a training program for young people, for teenagers, high school kids, college kids who wanted to learn about natural resources. Maybe think about a career in sort of as a park ranger or managing trails, managing natural resources. And I worked for that organization for about 5 or 6 years. I also worked for the Vermont Mountain Bike Association, where I was involved with planning different events and working with the National Forest and the Parks Department to get more access for mountain bike trails. So in about 2011, if you've ever been to, anyone ever been to Vermont? Anyone ever been to Vermont? Just one. So in Vermont, pretty much from November until April, it can be literally 20 below zero. It is really, really cold. So 2011, I was sick of the snow and the rain and the cold, and this job opened up with the International Mountain Bike Association as the regional director. So I moved down here in January 2012. I'm based up in Prescott, and I work in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Alaska. I'm going to be up to Alaska for a few trips this year. And what I do is work on all kinds of trail development projects with the Forest Service, with the BLM, with city parks, state parks, county parks. We work with health departments, community development agencies, chambers of commerce, regional development authorities, and the whole idea is IMBA's mission, which is to create, preserve, and enhance great mountain bike experiences. That's a little background to me and who we are. I'm going to go through a presentation tonight. Probably it'll take about 45 minutes or so. Definitely feel free to ask questions. Some of the slides will have a lot of text in them, so I'll maybe sort of go through some of those a little bit faster. And I'm also going to talk about some case studies of examples of projects that we're working on in the Southwest. For example, in Superior, Arizona, Caliente, Nevada, Kanab, Utah, Cedar City, Utah. These are places where we're working with the BLM and the Forest Service to design and develop new mountain bike trails. So it's very interesting to be down here. These guys were at one of our trainings up in Prescott probably about 2 months ago, and then we chatted about me coming down here to Nogales to do this presentation. So it's very exciting to be here. I've never been this close to the border. It's kind of cool. I took a photograph of it, put it on Facebook, so it's really nice to be here. Let me jump into this presentation. So we're going to talk about IMBA. We'll talk about why we develop trails, the economic impacts of trails, the health benefits, what are some of the key elements of developing a trail system in your community, best practices for being a destination if a community wants to attract people to come and stay and recreate. We'll talk about that, and then we'll go through some case studies as well. So IMBA's a non-profit. We're a 501c3. We have about 65 staff based up at our office in Boulder, Colorado. That's where our offices are. About 30 of our staff are based there. The rest of us are kind of all around the country, and we have staff that regularly go to Mexico, Israel, Australia, Hong Kong, Switzerland. We have staff that literally go all around the world. We have about 80,000 constituents. They're folks that are in our database, and some of them, usually about half of them are members, and then sometimes people expire and renew. But we have about probably 80 to 100,000 contacts in our database. We're represented in all 50 states, 30 countries. We've got 750 different clubs aligned with IMBA around the country. We have a lot of support from bike shops, and we have a lot of support from corporate supporters. So as you can see outside, I've got one of the IMBA Subarus. That's kind of the model a couple of years ago. but we're supported by IMBA, by Subaru and Shimano and Trek and all the big bike companies and you know, some smaller companies as well. Like I said, our mission is to protect, create and enhance great mountain biking experiences. So we're not, we want to see the sport grow and get bigger, but we really focus on, our job is to develop places to ride your bike. So we feel that if you develop the places and make them quality experiences and easy to get to, people will naturally ride. So it's not our mission statement to have 100 million mountain bikers. It's our mission statement to provide really good places to ride your mountain bike. And the majority of what we do is completed by volunteers. For example, up in Prescott, where I live this weekend, we had a workshop where 2 of my co-workers came and we did a workshop on, it was almost on masonry, like how to build out of rocks on mountain and make really interesting mountain bike trails out of rocks, how to build those features on mountain bike trails. But there was 2 staff persons and we had probably 30 volunteers. We had folks from Tucson, we had a guy from Sierra Vista, Flagstaff, Phoenix, Sedona, Payson, we had people from all around. So the majority of what we do all around the country and all around the world is completed by volunteers who we help organize and give advice to. So like I said, our office is up in Boulder, Colorado with 65 staff. We have lobbyists and lawyers who are regularly in Washington, D.C. And the reason that they're there is because a lot of the decisions that get made that affect federal policies and state policies and access to federal lands, those decisions are in large part made in Washington, D.C. So we have staff who are based in our office in Boulder, but they are regularly on Capitol Hill. They can go as high up as meeting with the president's staff. We do have contacts with President Obama's office. We have staff who meet with, someone coming in. We have staff who meet with the Forest Service Director for the whole country in DC and the Department of the Interior, for example. So it's really important that we have great relationships on a political level in DC because that affects what happens around the country. And an example I can give you is there are 2 big federal grants. One is called the Recreation Trails Program, and the other is called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Now these are federal grants that are funded through a small tax on gas in the gas station. And every year they get discussed and debated as to whether they're going to be approved for the following year. But for example, the last year the Recreational Trails Program was refunded, which was great. That's what we want. And in Prescott, we were lucky to get a grant of $50,000 to build a section of the Circle Trail. So there's an example of how the decisions that are made in Washington, D.C. can affect what goes on in your town or your village or your community or your county. So we have staff that are regularly up there ensuring that mountain bikers are represented at that level. We do have a program called the IMBA Trail Care Crew. These guys came up to that in Prescott a couple of months ago. And so these folks are hired for 2 years and they literally, I'll show you a photograph. For 2 years, they literally travel all around the USA. And what they're doing is trainings. So they will come and do a training, a presentation similar to what I'm doing. They'll do a training on how to actually design a trail. They'll do a training on how to actually build a section of trail sustainably. And they travel the whole country for 2 years, and they're scheduled about 6 months in advance. And that crew that you guys saw, they just finished this week, and they just finished their 2 years, and the new crew starts in about 2 weeks' time, and they'll overlap for a couple of months. But for example, you guys could apply to have them come here. I don't know if I know they've been to Sierra Vista. Yeah. They've been in Tucson a lot. You guys could apply to have them come here and do a presentation and do a workshop on actually building trails, and then get outside and start designing some trails. So that could be worth thinking about. So we really want to see trails as community assets. Trail users, for example, in the bottom left, that can be we want to provide trails that are good for us and give us more access, but trails can also be good for hikers. You can build easy trails so that folks can get out with a little baby stroller, and little kids can ride their strider bikes. You want the more advanced trails, you want the beginner trails, but you got to think about trail users as a whole. We're not just building what we want for us, we're building something that will provide a very valuable resource for the entire community. Obviously the mountain bike community at the top there is most important, and then working with land managers is a very important piece of what we do. I think we have one land manager for here from the city, and we work with city parks, state parks, county parks, and it's really important that we have good relationships. There's always a process, and you got to get permits and do the plans right, and it's really important to follow that process and not just go ahead and start building a legal trail, because you could be in sensitive archaeological sites, you could be in sensitive wildlife habitat. So we want to work really closely with land managers and design and build trails that are permanent, and your work that goes into the planning and design and the construction will be there forever. Rather than just going out and building the trail with your buddies and then you find out that the next week the land manager has come and decided that that's not the right place and the trail gets shut down. So I'll just run through a few of these numbers here. This is from the 2013 Outdoor Industry Report. 15% of Americans participate in biking of some kind, which is some 42 million people. Those who ride tend to ride about 64 times a year. The voting strength of mountain bikers is more than 1/3 of the voting strength of Americans over 65. And biking is the favorite outdoor activity of kids aged 6 to 17. So we want to be really, whenever we're designing trails, we want to think of involving youth groups and schools, and building trails that are close to neighborhoods and close to the town and close to parks and campgrounds, so that you can get kids to come in and ride, and then you can build progressively more difficult trails the further out you get. But you want to be building that next generation of riders, because there's a couple more guys. So why do we build trails? Trails are cost-effective facilities. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Trails are really good for economic revitalization, and I'm going to give some examples. I keep standing in your way. I'm going to give some examples of places that we're working, where we're designing trails and they're going to bring tourists into the community. They're great for community development, so building places for local folks to enjoy themselves and recreate, and they provide safe surroundings for outdoor recreation. So we covered that. So some cost comparisons of different types of trails. A golf course can be, there's another version. A golf course can be up to $1 million per hole. And I certainly wouldn't want to be managing a golf course in the Sonoran Desert. It's probably going to be more than that when you think of the cost of water and grass lawn maintenance. So, an 18-hole golf course, millions and millions of dollars. Playgrounds, depending on the size, can be anywhere up to $125,000. Ball fields can be up to $5 million. Skate parks can be up to about $25,000 per 10,000 square feet. Paved bike paths can be expensive, but natural surface trails, that's the type of trails that we want to build, whether it's with volunteers or with paid staff. They can be anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 per mile, and that's depending on the type of terrain, if it's very rocky, if it's very steep, if you've got to import a lot of materials, if you're using an excavator. So in terms of the different types of public recreation facilities, mountain bike trails, when they're built properly and built sustainably, they can be one of the least costly, and they can be very cost effective in terms of having minimal maintenance and attracting people to your community. They can lead to community transformation. We chatted just now about bike parks. And for example, where I live in Prescott, Arizona, there's a city park. And the park's probably, I'd say guess it's probably 20 or 30 acres. And there's a little corner that's literally the size of this room, and it's a little mini pump track, and which is like a BMX track, and it was professionally built. It cost about $10,000, and it's super fun. You go down, and there are little kids from this size. I go down and ride it, and it's just about the size of this room, and you can it's like I said, like a little mini BMX track. There are no big jumps or anything, and there are very smooth berms and smooth features that you can roll over, and it's really popular. So that's an example of how you can take a little tiny piece of city land. Sometimes it's it can be a piece of land that's sort of forgotten about or isn't seen to have much value, and you can put like a really small facility, as small as like a quarter acre. You can build a little bike park. So trails provide safe surroundings for recreation. We want to get as many folks out riding as possible, and here's an example of this little kid's riding over these wooden features, but they're not just venturing off into the wilderness where there could be very difficult, what's the word, like unpredictable terrain. A trail hasn't actually been built or designed, but we want to design proper recreational trails that are safe and easy and fun for kids to use. Trails can be good for economic revitalization. Like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, or towards the end, but I'm working on a project in Caliente, Nevada. Caliente is about 2 hours north of Las Vegas, and it's a little town of 1,000 people, so it's really small. And we've designed about 45 miles of trails, and we were fortunate to get some really big federal funding. But it was really interesting that the city, like it's a tiny little town, and they don't have any big chains of hotels. They've got a couple of little hotels that are just locally owned little hotels. And the mayor and the city council committed $10,000 towards trail planning. And in my mind, that was really big, because it's a tiny little town, and $10,000 must have been 10 years worth of lodging tax from those hotels. So it was really cool to see that they felt that using their lodging tax, someone comes and stays in a hotel, I think it's 3/8 of 1%, and it's a really small amount, goes into their lodging fund, and then they build up this money and they use it to promote tourism. And they gave $10,000 towards actually designing new trails in their town. So that was really cool to see that they see that they're thinking 10 years down the line, that if we spend some money now, we're going to get these trails designed, and we're going to get these tourists that are going to come and really help the economy. There's going to be a lot of facts and figures in these next few slides, but in overall, the outdoor recreation economy contributes about $650 billion to the U.S. economy. So that's camping, fishing, hunting, hiking, mountain biking, road cycling. So when you add all those up, it's very significant. It's $650 billion is a lot of money just from people like us recreating, buying our bikes, buying your knee pads, driving to Moab for the weekend to go mountain biking. $650 billion per year. And in terms of participation, you can see that right at the bottom there is wildlife viewing, which about 66 million people participate in. But the next one is bicycling. It's about 60 million people around the country claim that they bicycle on a regular basis. So it's the second most popular activity for Americans. Outdoor recreation creates jobs in all sectors, whether it's hotel. Like example I just gave was Moab. Imagine if you took mountain biking out of Moab. Anyone ever been to Moab, Utah? There's a lot of mountain biking. If you took mountain biking out of Moab, Utah, you would lose a heck of a lot of jobs. Because when you go there, if you went there this weekend, the motels and the hotels and the campgrounds are packed with people, and the restaurants are packed with people. And folks are there because of they've got jeeps and they're rock crawling, but a lot of people are there for mountain biking. And IMBA worked on a project up in Sandy Ridge, Oregon, and it's probably about 2 hours from Portland. And we built 15 miles, so not a lot, we just built 15 miles of trails on BLM land. And then we have counters at the trailhead. And those trails get 125,000 people a year coming to ride 15 miles. We're not talking about hundreds of miles, we're talking about 15, and they get 125,000 visitors a year. Now imagine if you own the gas station down the road, or the Motel 6, or the restaurant, or you own a local bar, or a brew pub, or a coffee shop. That's a lot of people coming to that little town of Sandy just because of mountain bike trails, and it's only because of 15 miles. It's not a huge network, but it's 15 miles of really well built, high quality, well designed trails, and they probably cost 15 miles. I mean, it probably cost a couple of $1 million, maybe $1 million or so, which sounds like a lot of money. But if you think of the impact of 125,000 people a year in a tiny little town, and think of the impact of 125,000 people a year for 10 years, that $1 million to develop the trails is tiny. Let's jump ahead to this one. So bicycling, the national bike economy, just the biking piece, is about 133 billion into the national economy, 17 billion in taxes, and bicycling supports about 2.5 million jobs around the USA. So that's everything from the bike industry, whether it's shops or manufacturing, to those resorts and towns where a lot of jobs are created because of cycling. So just in the mountain states, so consider in Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Montana, Nevada, Wyoming, mountain biking brings in about $6.2 billion just into the mountain states. About 60,000 jobs across the mountain states are supported by mountain biking. $1 billion a year in tax, $430 million in gear sales, and 3.7 billion in trip-related expenses. So going to the gas station, buying food, buying a hotel. So a lot of money can be generated from mountain biking. And then getting down to a very local level in bike shops. How many bike shops are there here in town? Just one? Yes. Yeah. The saying is trails equal sales, and there have been studies done by the National Bike Dealers Association, and whenever new trails are built in a community, 60% increase in equipment sales. People are spending more people are spending more money in bikes when there's a trail system right close to town. Increased property values. This is a very interesting one, and again, I know personally that I'm looking to buy a house in Prescott at the minute, and access to trails is one of the things that's on my mind. There are a couple of condos I've been looking at, and I know that one of them has a little city park really close by with some trails, and another one has there's like an urban bike path that runs around Prescott. One of them it's 100 yards away, and that's really important to me. That I want to live somewhere where I can get to trails very, very easily, and that's good for property values. It's not good for me right now because I'm buying a house and the prices are going up because of the trails, but it's good if you're selling. So home buyers are willing to pay up to $9,000 more to be located 1,000 feet closer to a trail. So that's pretty significant that people are thinking that way, that they want access to these facilities in their communities. So let's talk a little second here about the health benefits. Anyone have any questions, first of all? No? Nothing yet? So let's talk a little bit about the health benefits of single track. So that's an example of a pump track right there, that little photograph. That's probably, like an acre or so, a half an acre max. And that's a pretty well developed one. It's actually made out of concrete, so it probably costs slightly more. But the one in Prescott is very similar to that. But imagine it's just mounds of dirt, and little kids just come down and do laps on it. So North Carolina State University found that 75% of folks that were surveyed indicated that they would exercise more if trails were created. So whenever there's easy access, people are going to get out and use trails more. It affects the health benefits of single track. For example, trails reduce medical costs. Every $1 invested in trails leads to a $4 in direct medical benefit. And an example I could give very locally is in Tucson. We're working on a bike park, an urban bike park. It's a pretty big site. It's probably about 100 acres near Davis-Monthan. And the plan that we did was funded by Tucson Medical Center. So we contacted them and told them with this idea, and the city and the mayor's office and everything. And we talked to Tucson Medical Center, and they fronted the money to complete the conceptual sort of design for the park, because they see that it's good for kids. It's in a neighborhood, it's kind of a lower income neighborhood, and those kids don't have a lot of access. They don't have the parents with the SUV who are bringing them to the nice places to ride every weekend. It's kids that live right in downtown Tucson, and they don't have access to very good recreation. And Tucson Medical Center felt that building a bike park in that area, or at least doing the planning for the bike park, would be really good for local kids. The kids could literally hop over their fence. It's right behind the neighborhood, which was really cool to see that the hospital stepped up to that. So we covered the health benefits. Let's see. So this is kind of hard to put your finger on, but I know that when I mountain bike probably 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, and in general I use my bike pretty much every day if I'm zipping around town or going to the coffee shop or going out for dinner. And you generally have a sense of a better sense of well-being from being physically active. And I know I've got lots of friends in the bike business, and lots of friends who run like clinics and summer camps for kids. And a friend of mine he runs summer camps, very successful. He has a couple of hundred kids every year, and he's also a teacher. And so he's in the school system with these kids, and then a bunch of these kids are in his mountain bike summer camp. And he tells me over and over that when he goes back to school in September, the other teachers in the school can all tell which kids have been in his summer camp, because they're more alert, they're more active. They haven't been sitting for 2 months over the summer playing video games. They've been outside, they've been getting healthy and getting active, and then that leads into other activities. Then maybe they're going fishing, or maybe they're going hiking, but they're feeling the kids are active. And the other teachers can identify when they go back to school in September. The teachers can point at the kids and say that kid was mountain biking all summer, just because of their attitude when they're back in their positive attitude when they're back in class. So that's very important. So we talked a little bit about screen time, but these little kids in striders. That's an example of like what we see in Prescott at the bike park. And then I think that bottom bullet is very important. The idea of getting more women and young girls out riding and having a more positive body image. And that's a part of mountain biking that's really exploding these days, are girls and women's mountain bike programs. I know lots of women who ride regularly, who lead clinics, and women don't always want to go out with 20 guys who want to go and ride 50 miles. Men and women think differently and learn differently and recreate differently. So, for example, in Prescott, again, where I live, there's women in all abilities, and they're all out mountain biking together. And the ones that feel more confident or more experienced will go and do 15 miles, and the new folks will go and do 4 miles, and then they'll come back and hang out in the parking lot or go out for pizza or whatever. But those sorts of women's clinics and programs to get young girls healthy and active are a really, really important piece of mountain biking, and certainly one of the pieces that we see that's growing the fastest right now. And we see it in our organisation. We have, of our 65 staff, we probably have 35 or 40 women. Like the majority of the people that work in IMBA, we probably have at least 35 or 40 women mountain bikers. And I certainly see it in my job, and I think it's phenomenal. When I've been working with land managers for probably about 15 years now, and it was always very male dominated. But now I can think of all the big projects I'm working on, the majority of the big projects that I'm working on with the Forest Service, with the BLM, with city parks, The land managers, like the park rangers and the foresters that I deal with are women, because more of them more women are involved in outdoor recreation and natural resources, and that's really good to see. And it's certainly a change that I've noticed like in the last 15 years or so. Second half about how to develop community trail systems. So I talked a lot about the background and sort of the big picture of the impact. But we'll talk a little bit now about how to actually develop trail systems. And the number one thing is to get the community involved. You develop a trail system can't just be the work of one or two people. It's got to be an effort where the mountain bikers are involved, and the hikers are involved, and the land managers are involved. And I say this all the time to folks that developing a mountain bike trail system isn't something that the mountain bikers should sort of think up themselves and then surprise everybody and say, hey, here's our plan for this whole piece of land for thousands of acres, hundreds of millions of acres that we want to do. A mountain bike trail system should be something that everyone has been involved in from the start, and is very transparent and very inclusive, and lots of ideas are brought in, and the trail runners might want to give suggestions, and the equestrians might want to give suggestions, and the local school might want to develop a place for little kids to get out and ride. So a trail system should be everyone thinking together in the community, and that can be like in Caliente, for example. I work with the BLM, the state parks, the city council, the county commissioners, the county regional development authority, the Nevada Department of Tourism. And so these are all these different agencies, and it's very cooperative. Everyone's been involved from the start. The mayor's involved, the park rangers involved, and everyone wants to see it happen. Some of the motel owners are involved. And so it's not just me and a couple of mountain bikers sort of scheming up our ideas that we're going to surprise people with. It's everyone coming up with this idea together. So how get the community involved, and the community not just being mountain bikers, but people who live in the area. And then creating a sustainable organization is very important. It sounds like you guys already have. Is it OS3? Is that the?
Zero stress. This means zero stress.
Okay.
No stress.
Yeah.
No stress.
No stress?
Yeah.
Oh,
that
okay.
means in Spanish.
Got it.
Yeah.
So having an organization, again with the 501c3 is really important. So there are point people, there's leadership, there's a group of folks who are making decisions. And they're active at a political level, so that could be meeting with the mayor, or the county commissioners, or the governor, or the city council. They're active on a social level. So, for example, they're putting on events like this, or fundraisers, or bike ride events with the school, for example. And then they're involved in the physical component, which is actually being out there when it comes to building trails and designing trails. There's a group of people who are going to step up to the mark. Photo disappeared. I don't know what happened there, but that last photograph was just an example, and I'll talk very briefly about a sustainable trail. So, when we say sustainable, we mean, the word sustainable means it's something that's enduring, that's going to last, that's going to stay around. And that's really important. We don't want your volunteer efforts to go into designing trails that are going to get closed, or they're going to fall apart, or become eroded. So physically, a sustainable trail is one that withstands the effects of the weather and the effects of lots of people using it. And the way we do that, to give a very brief overview, is we don't build. Imagine if you've got a hillside, if you've got a mountain like this, and if you build your trail straight down like that. We don't get rain very often here, but when it does rain, the rain's just going to become, your trail's a funnel, and it's just going to wash away. So if you've got a hillside like that, we never build the trail straight down. Instead, we build the trail across, following the contour. And what that means is that the trail, when it does rain, water will just flow across your trail, because your trail's going that way and the water's going that way. So those last couple of photos, I don't know what happened, But they were examples of a trail that was really steep, and you could see that it was eroded, and a trail that was less steep, and you could see that it wasn't eroded. And then there are things that you can do to make any given trail more or less difficult, depending on who's using it, depending on where it is in the trail system, depending on what kind of trail you want. But the general concept is the trail should run, if you're looking at a hillside, the trail should run from left to right instead of straight up and down. That's kind of the basic concept. It's really important to lower the barrier for entry. That's Cadence, is one of my co-workers, little girls. And that's Valmont Bike Park up in Boulder, Colorado. And Valmont it's probably a 30-acre site. It's probably the biggest and best bike park in the world. We were involved in a little part of it. Lots of different trails groups had a lot to do with it. But there are trails for everyone. You know, there are guys, if you went there, you could see people like jumping off those jumps and getting 30 feet up in the air and landing on the other side. And then 10 feet away, there's little kids on their strider bikes going around the pump track. And then there's little girls at Caden, who's probably like a 10-year-old, who are sort of somewhere in the middle and getting progressively better. There's a little video, but it seems that this is a little tiny kid of this size, and he's on a trail that his dad's having fun on.
Sí.
Couldn't hear that, but his dad said, do you want to go and pee? He said, no, I don't want to pee. He wanted to keep riding. This is a really cute little example of building a really nice trail, and you know, parents and little kids are getting out and enjoying it together. He's going to be a pro rider in a few years. Yeah, like I said, this little guy's probably this size. Like I said, road trails for all abilities. You've got little kids strider bike trails, and then that's probably Sedona there on the right. And obviously it's a pretty difficult trail. Developing really good trail maps is important. If you want folks to come and stay in your town and experience the community, it's good. It's fun to be a mountain biker and go on an adventure and get lost. But if you want folks to participate in the sport a lot, especially beginners, developing those really nice trail maps so that folks can feel comfortable when they're out there in the woods. And the trails you can see, similar to the grading that you would have at a ski resort. You've got the green trails, you can see a couple of greens that are sort of closer in. You can see the blue trails that go further out, and then you can see the black trails that are sort of at the furthest points. And that's pretty straightforward. It's so that you know when a family or you know someone pulls up into the parking lot and maybe they're a new rider, you don't build a double black diamond, really difficult trail right out of the parking lot and give that as their only example, as their only the only place you can go and ride. You want to have the green trails that are close, and this could be. You can think of this on lots of scales. This could be the trails around Nogales. You could have the green trails on these hillsides around here, maybe even really close in, and then the blue trails are a little bit further out, and then the black trails are the ones that are up at 5, 6, 10,000 feet. I'm not sure what the terrain is here, but you want to have those easy trails close, and then progressively more difficult is people have got to sort of work harder to get to the further out, more difficult trails. A phone app that we promote a lot, an app you can use on your smartphone. It's called MTB Project, and it's a free app that you can download. And basically, whenever you're in a new place, a new town, and I use it all the time when I'm traveling, you just kind of type in your zip code, wherever you happen to be, whatever town you happen to be in, and it pops up on your phone and shows you where all the trail systems are. And it's really helpful. There are about 60,000 miles of trails all around the country are on this app. And I used it a couple of weeks ago. I was in Carson City, Nevada. I was in my hotel and I wanted to find a trail close by. And I just plugged in my location. It's all connected to Google Maps and that stuff. And it's free. I plugged in my location and it showed me that there's a trail about 3 blocks behind my hotel. And then when you go out and ride, you can pull your phone out of your pocket, and the little thing moves. It shows you where you are and where the intersections are. Does anyone use it? Anyone use the MTB project? You've got it? Yeah, excellent. Are there many trails in Nogales on there?
No.
So I know a lot in Tucson. A lot of
there's just one right there.
Yeah.
And the rest of the trails is in Sahuarita, Arizona Trail, and Tucson.
Okay, yeah. There's a bit further.
Not much.
Yeah. Having good trail signs are important, and it's good to think that whenever you pull up a trailhead, sometimes you see these signs and they've got like millions of little letters and all this federal code and regulations.
Yeah.
You want to have about 5 or 6 things on there that maybe like what time the parks open, what time the trails are open to. Be careful if there's poison ivy. Share the trails. Expect to see horses. You don't need to have every little detail about every law that you might possibly break when you're out there. Instead, just the basic information and make it really appealing and interesting for folks to come and ride. And then it's important to think about who you want to attract if you're thinking of the area as a destination. Variety and difficulty of terrain, beginner to advanced, and bike optimized. So trails that are built for all user groups, but some trails that are just built for mountain bikes is very appealing. You want to think about the number of miles that you're building. So, for example, in Superior, Arizona, where we're working, and Caliente, Nevada, those are obviously huge landscapes, similar to you have here, but we're designing sort of 30, 40, 50 miles of trail. So we're not designing 500 miles, but maybe a couple of dozen miles of really well-built trails. Scenery and natural landscape is very important to a mountain biker who's traveling to a new location. Amenities, brew pubs, coffee shops. I imagine there's really good food here in Nogales. And then the reputation of having the community really behind the project. Like again, for example, in Prescott, there's a really good mountain bike community, and the city parks department are very supportive, and the Forest Service are very supportive, and there are a bunch of bike shops. There are 5 bike shops in Prescott. A new outfitter has just opened. It's 2 women who lead women's mountain bike camps, and they guide folks all around to any visitors and tourists who want to come, and they do kids summer camps. So having that really good community, so that when visitors come, they feel welcome. They feel that this is a place where they're welcome to be. A couple of facts and figures about mountain bikers. 43 years old is the average age. 73% of them are college or postgraduate degree. Household income of $106,000, which is pretty significant. And 53% are professionals and have families. So if an economic development agency is interested in developing a mountain bike trail system in their town, this is the demographic that they're going to be attracting, and it's a pretty good one when you think of families coming with the disposable income. And some of the figures that we use that are that a mountain biker who goes on a day trip, the average expenditure is $97. So that's someone driving to Sedona for the day, and you buy gas and you buy a t-shirt at the bike shop and you get something for lunch for $97 a day. And then mountain bikers who stay overnight, the average is $227. That's how much they spend. So that's their gas and hotel and breakfast and dinner as well. So again, that's if you think about that, of like Sandy Ridge in Oregon, you have 125,000 mountain bikers a year. And let's say they were just coming for the day, spending $97 each. That's a lot of people coming and spending the money. So a couple more points here with destination mountain biking. 80% of mountain bikers take at least one trip of one or more nights a year. The average length is four and a half nights. 45% prefer to camp. 45% prefer inns and bed and breakfasts, and 8% in hotels. If you add them up, it only gets to 98%. I'm not sure why, but 2% maybe sleep in their car or something.
Or don't sleep.
So, lodging with cyclists in mind, this is something that I pay a lot of attention to because I travel so much around the southwest and I very often have my bike with me. But there are examples of hotels that mountain bikers have, you can have an expensive bike and you don't want to leave it locked in your car, you want to bring it into your hotel at night. And you might think of examples of hotels that have, like around the back of the hotel, they might have like a bike stand and a hose, so that whenever you get done with your ride at the end of the day, you can clean your bike off, you can fix it up, and it just makes you feel welcome that you're not sort of intruding upon them. Some hotels, for example, will have places where you can lock your bike safely without having to bring it into the room. They'll have like a sort of a valet service, and you can drop your bike off, and it'll be locked up in a storage unit overnight, which is great. Again, to attract people to come and stay, having professional photography. I think this is Phil's world in Cortez, Colorado. I could be wrong. But in the Southwest, it's very photogenic. It doesn't matter where we are. But photographing the trails professionally, these will end up on Instagram and Facebook and all kinds of social media. That's a really important piece in developing a mountain bike destination, is having really quality photographs. Advertising, again, on social media is a very important component. And in biking media, they use the example again of Caliente, Nevada. I've been working with a couple of bike magazines as we developed that project over the last few years. And we've had 3 articles in Bike Magazine, which is a really big mountain bike magazine. We've had 3 articles in that magazine as they're interested in tracking the development and progress of that project. So having the media could be local media, it could be your local television channel or news channel, it could be a statewide channel, but having local media come and find out what you're doing is really important. Advertising, let's see. Quantifying your success. So this is kind of a difficult piece that is important, but it's kind of hard to get our heads around. But if there's a way to collect the numbers of visitors, and again, in some of these new destinations that we're working in, like Caliente, Nevada, there's very little tourism in that town. So it's going to be very easy to see the difference over the course of a year or 5 years once the trails are built. We're pretty much starting at the base. But whether it's things like increases in sales tax, counters at trailheads, like in Sandy Ridge, for example, they have counters, little cameras, and that's how they know they have 125,000. Again, in Prescott, they have the Whiskey 50. Does anyone here do the whiskey off-road, the bike race up in Prescott? It's coming up. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. They have over 2,000 riders, and the guy that sort of owns that company does a really good job with sort of tracking all the numbers and everything. And that event brings in $2.3 million into the Prescott economy in 3 days, just that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It brings in almost $2.5 million. So he's very good at going back to the city council and doing a presentation to them a few months afterwards, showing the impact that his event had in the city. So the restaurants, and that means that then next year when he has to get permits, or maybe he wants to expand, maybe he wants to have more vendors come, maybe he wants more sponsorship. Whenever you can go to the mayor and the city council and say, this event brings in $2.3 million, you're making a really good case for yourself to have increased support. So this is, we'll jump into a couple of case studies now. This is one on the East Coast. It's called Alagrippus, and it's in Pennsylvania. So these folks did their survey and found out about $70 per day was the average spend. And in this trail system, they've had like another hotel get built just because of the mountain bike trails. And they estimated when it opened in 2010, it's about 30 miles, they estimated about they were expecting about 9,000 visitors, and they ended up with 26,000 visitors, because almost 3 times as many people came to ride the trails because 30 miles of really good, high-quality trails were built. And about $70 per day is what people were spending. In Prescott, we've just covered that, but the Whiskey 50 has about 2,000 participants, and it brings in $2.5 to $3 million. And everyone's working together in Prescott. I feel very fortunate that I just happened to land there. But the success there is not to do with me. There's already a really good mountain bike community, and it's the local riders, it's the local bars who support their events, it's the bike shops who give them swag for their raffles, it's the Forest Service who work with them to develop new trails, and the city parks who develop new trails, and when they come to a boundary with the city and the Forest Service, there aren't any access issues. Everyone really wants to see this progress. So that really good community support is leading to some really good things in Prescott, Arizona. So the couple of other examples that I mentioned, Caliente, Nevada, we've designed about 45 miles of trails. The funding for the design work came from the city lodging tax, the county economic development agency, and the BLM. They committed the funds to plan the trails. And then very fortunately, the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, they have funding specifically earmarked just for Southern Nevada for sort of rural economic development. So we were able to, our project happened to be in the right place. So we were able to get a really big chunk of money in the last 6 months that we can use to actually build the trails over the next few years. Superior, Arizona, which is to the east of Phoenix in the Superstition Mountains. We're working there with the Forest Service, with the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the city councillors, commissioners, and Resolution Copper, the big copper mining company, are involved because they want to see good things in the community. So we're developing a whole trail system around Superior, Arizona. In Kanab, Utah, which is way southern Utah, not far from across the Arizona state line, and it's in Kane County, and we're developing a whole trail system around Kanab, really close to Zion National Park, and the funding again came from the tourism department. So I'm trying to give these examples to you guys of these are the sort of places that whether it's health agencies in Tucson, or whether it's tourism agencies in Kanab and Superior, or Superior, actually the mining company, are providing the money for the planning. But there are lots of groups out there that they're not concerned about mountain biking. Like the Tucson Medical Center doesn't have mountain biking in its mission statement, but they see that what we're doing will be good for the health of the community, and that's what they're interested in. And the same as in Kane County, Utah. The county don't specifically focus on mountain biking, but they see that developing mountain bike trails will bring tourists, and that's what they're interested in. So as mountain bikers, we have to think, it's not just about, we're not just developing 18-inch wide trails for us and our friends. We're developing trails that little kids can get out and ride. We're developing trails that the community at large will benefit from. We're developing trails that the hotel and innkeepers will see the benefit from, that tourists will come and stay and play in your town. So it's not a matter of just thinking, I'm a mountain biker and I want more places to ride. That will definitely happen, but we have to think of developing mountain bike trails as ways to develop the entire community. That's where the success comes, when all those groups and all those pieces are working together. And I think that's pretty much it from me. Let's see. So our website, we'll put the wrong director on here, put the wrong slide in, but the website's IMBA.com. We do have a couple of books that are available on our website on trail planning. Tom's our regional director for the Southeast. I'm not sure why he's on here, but in this newsletter, there's a newsletter passed around here. My name is in there, and obviously these guys know how to get in touch with me. But when I come to any community, whenever there's a town and a group of people who are committed to it, and you've got the land, there's no reason why it can't happen. It's just a matter of people getting organised and making the right connections in the community, and talking to the mayor and giving this presentation to the mayor. We could jump on a conference call again with other folks who couldn't make it. But whenever I come to a community like this, there's no reason, and I know that I've heard from a lot of people that and it's sort of not very scientific, but I've heard that mountain bike racing is really popular in Mexico. And like when I go out to El Paso, Texas sometimes, and is it Juarez, right across from El Paso?
Juarez.
Yeah. When they have mountain bike races in El Paso, Texas, like the vast majority of people that are coming to ride them are coming across the border, And I go to events in California and like Sea Otter and Interbike, and I get so many people coming to talk about mountain biking, but they're coming across the border to ride in Arizona or ride in the southern states. So whenever you've got a border town like this, developing a really cool mountain bike trail system could become very popular. You could see a lot of folks coming to stay in hotels, which is going to be good for the economy. You could see a lot of people coming for races and such. So I think there's a lot of potential. It's a matter of getting organised and a group of people starting to make the right connections in the community and get the plans developed. That's pretty much it for me. Any questions? Feel free to ask questions.
Does the IMBA ever take the lead and reach out to the community because you want to, create a trail system in a particular region, like say Southern Arizona? Or is it always the grassroots effort from the community reaching out to you?
I would say probably 10 years ago, mountain biking, 15 years ago, mountain biking was a lot less evolved, and there wasn't as much as there is now. My job now is I don't have to go anywhere asking people, my email and my phone is overflowing with land managers. And in Utah, it's very interesting that Utah, everything that we're doing is very much driven by the BLM, the land manager. The land managers see what's going on in one district, and then they want it in their district, and then you start to get things going in that district, and then people from the next district call us. So I would say 10, 15 years ago, IMBA had to go looking and really, but now there are so many really good examples that are very easy to find, you know, online or in newsletters or whatever. That the vast majority of what I do is responding to people contacting me saying, please come and help us. Yeah. Yes, sir.
But I know in Nogales, there's not that many space owned by the city, like close by, like if you go the mountain bike trail. You know, the previous mayor.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at like the national forest,
Yeah.
to build something that's really national forest, could you help, like, you know, do the paperwork in the process? I know the closest official trail here is in Madera Canyon,
Yeah.
which is, you know, probably like a 40-minute drive for us.
I work with the Forest Service all the time. I work with the Forest Service in Prescott, in Sedona. We're doing a trail work weekend with the Forest Service on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. They certainly have their internal processes to get permits and everything, but IMBA definitely helps with sort of moving the process along. And the Forest Service often feel confident of having IMBA involved. You know, they see what we're doing in other places, and there's a certain reputation that they feel confident of having us come in. So I work with the Forest Service. Probably a third of my, at least 30% of my time is spent with the Forest Service.
And is it like, I mean, how long does it take for them to come and evaluate like a property and see if it's, you can build a trail actually right there?
It totally depends, you know. Whenever, the way that IMBA is structured is that, you know, I work as regional director, and my job is funded by like membership, like people who write the $30 checks or whatever. That's where my job is funded. And then what I do is things like this, you know, and meetings with mayors and the Forest Service and the BLM. When it comes to actual trail design, we have a whole separate department within IMBA who does the design, but all that work is on contracts. You know, they say what we're doing in Caliente, Nevada, or what we're doing in Superior, Arizona, those communities have said, we want to pay you guys to come in. And this isn't a sales pitch. There are lots of great organizations that can design great trails, but those communities say, we want to pay you to come in and actually design. I don't do the like detailed design. We have other staff that do that, and then we give those proposals to the Forest Service, or I should say, we develop those proposals in conjunction with the Forest Service, and then they have to then get their permits. And it totally depends on if there are lots of endangered species, if there are lots of archaeological sites. It could be a year, it could be a couple of years to get a trail designed.
Do you guys also offer services as grant writers?
What was that, sorry?
Do you guys offer services as grant writers? And then if you help writing the grant? Like that?
Yeah, we do some of that. Yeah, like I've written some grants. It's more, again, my job more these days is, like in the past, because, you know, we're in a really good position these days. Like in the past, we had to give a lot of resources. We really want to do this, and we'll find the money to do it. Where we're at now is that, you know, I go to these places around the region, and I meet with the communities and the sort of the leadership team, and I explain to them that where the money is, you know, and then it's up to them to allocate. You know, like I bet in Nogales there's probably some kind of a tourism tax. There's probably a county economic development group, you know, and it's my job now is sort of identifying those sources. But there are times when I do some grant writing, but it's not a huge part of what I do. Yeah, I more often have a lot of information that I give to locals, and then they can write the grants, and I can help with proofing them, you know. Yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned two sources for grants. What was the name of those?
Okay, there are two federal grants. One is, they're both initials. One is called RTP, which stands for the Recreational Trails Program, and it's administered in Arizona by the State Parks Department, but the money can go to any community. The city of Nogales could apply and get some, or the Forest Service could apply and get some, or, you know, the the city of Tucson could apply. So it's called the Recreational Trails Program. And the other one is called LWCF, which stands for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And it's often used, these are examples that we don't even realize what's going on in Washington DC and how it affects what's going on in your town. And often a lot of city land that a city can buy, or a city who has developed a ball field or a football field or a basketball court, that money very often comes from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is a national federal program that you can apply to, and cities often get chunks of money from there to do projects in their town. Yeah.
And those grants and those organizations, you can apply for grants. In a place like this, in Dallas, we don't have a trail. Probably one.
Yeah.
It's more easy to get those grants for these organizations in a place like this, which we don't have any trails. It's easy.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It totally depends on the project. You could look at an example like Sedona, where they have hundreds of miles of trails, and they might apply, the Forest Service in Sedona might apply to that fund, and it might be just seen as a very high priority project. But on the other hand, like somewhere like Nogales, where there's a group of folks who really want to develop things, it could be seen as a priority because there isn't anything here, but there's a lot of community demand and a lot of need to do it. So that could be the case. Yeah.
It's all in how you write it, though.
Exactly.
How you
Yeah.
present the situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And for example, like in Tucson, when I was talking to Tucson Medical Center about the bike park, I wasn't talking about tourism or economic development or anything like that. I was talking about healthy kids. Get kids away from their laptops, get kids away from their computer games and their screens. Whereas if I was talking to the Arizona Tourism Department, I'm not talking about healthy kids, I'm talking about bringing tourists into Arizona. So you got to tailor, what you're doing can sort of meet lots of ends, but you got to tailor what you're saying to the agency.
The population of any city, for example, here in Dallas, it depends on the population of the cyclists, or what it depends on the members to become a priority to get the funds.
That's a good question. I would say it's a matter of whichever organization is applying, showing that your work will have and will impact lots of people. If you say that we want to build we want to build a Black Diamond mountain bike trail, that's not going to be a high priority. But if you say we want to build a multi-use trail or a multi-use system that you can have a kids trail and a beginner trail, and people can run on it, and you can push your stroller and you can ride your mountain bike, that's good for a lot more people, Whereas if you write a grant and say, we want $100,000 for a really difficult trail that only 20 people can ride, it's not going to be a priority. But if it's a grant that lots of people are going to be impacted by, that's going to be much better. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Well, I do.
Yeah.
I recently read an article that said that thanks to your grant writing skills, you were able to secure over $400,000 of funds for a location in Nevada, I think.
Yep.
My question to you is, what would it take for you to work with our community in grant writing? Because I know that grant writing is a work of art, and it would be very nice if we already have the volunteers and we somehow have the approval from the city council.
Yeah.
To have a good expertise in writing. What would it take for you to work with us, or I don't know, somebody at IMBA?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would probably be more that I would work with someone to sort of give them examples of previous grants that we've written,
Okay.
and this is the kind of language that we use, And again, because we have so much going on all around the region, like I try to sort of spread myself and help everyone. So, like my work, if I were to come here again, I think it would be much better for me to meet with like, you know, a smaller group of people who are, you know, on the city council
Like the
or
mayor or something.
yeah, or people who are familiar with like if there's a tourism, if there's a Santa Cruz County.
Yes.
If there's a Santa Cruz County Economic Development Group, you know, I would come and meet with those groups. And like I said, I don't do a lot of the actual grant writing these days. I more identify to the community and say, hey, the money's over there. And then together we would work, we could write a grant together to, you know, that they would get.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the starting point for us would be to get the city government on board, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. City government, not just city government, but politicians in general. You know, whether it's city or county or commissioners or whoever they are. I think that's a conversation we could have. We could identify who we should talk to. And you know, something that I've done that I think is really important, and I can send you guys an example. Like in Kingman, Arizona, which is way up northwest corner, or for example in Tucson, or for example in Caliente, what I said to all the groups that we were working with, I said, let's get our ideas into like a 2-page document, you know? It's not a trail plan, it's a summary of what it is we want to achieve, the vision over the next 5-10 years, you know? So we want to use the language about getting kids active and bringing more tourists, and we want to see, you know, bike paths connecting around the town. So even like talking to the politicians, and that's a very important point, very important step, but the coming up with a document, and it doesn't need to be too strict or rigid, and it can change, but some kind of a document that sort of identifies what's the vision here over the next 5 to 10 years, you know? That's really important, because then it means that whenever you're talking, are you involved with city government or no?
I'm involved with this group.
Okay. It means that when it, like say, imagine we had that document and it's like a 2-page PDF, you know? Whenever, say you're talking to the Chamber of Commerce, this is what we're talking about, and then say you're talking to the city parks, so everyone's talking about the same thing, rather than they're like, okay, who are these guys and who's working over there and who's working over there? Do those guys know each other? You know, having a document that is a summary of what the community would like to see, and it means that whenever you get a chance to talk to the mayor, you can send them the PDF. Or when you get a chance to talk to the Forest Service, you can send them the PDF. It just makes it look really organized, and everyone's doing the same thing, rather than having. It doesn't matter if it's one group. If it looks disorganized, it's disorganized, you know. Whereas if it could be one group or it could be 20 groups, but you want to have one group and your documents sort of summarized. So that's something I can help you guys work on, is like a summary of who you are, what kind of trail plan you want to come up with here are some partners we could work with, here are some new folks we'd like to connect with. I can certainly help you guys with that. Yep. Any more questions?
No questions?
No? We're good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.